Welcome, everybody, to Integrate Yourself. I'm your host, Allison Pillow. You can find me at pureenergypdx.com. Today, we have the most special guest. Today, we have Rosanne Grace, one of my favorite people. I just did the most amazing retreat with her, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we were doing at the retreat, just kind of some of the things that she helps people with, but also we're going to get into some really, really good stuff today. A lot of things that I have had questions about that I want to ask Rosanne about, and her and I have talked a little bit about this too, and played around with some ideas and sharing with you guys today. So we're in for a special treat. But before we get into it, I want to give Rosanne a proper intro because you guys met her a long time ago. If you've been listening to this show for a while, she was back in when our show was in the teens. So like 14 or something like that. It was like way at the beginning when Maya was with me on the show. And now I decided to bring Rosanne back on because that was so long ago, and she's evolved and much more has happened to her since we've seen her last. So, and so I'm just going to give you guys a little information about Rosanne to give you an idea of where she's coming from. So after Rosanne's father's death, this became a catalyst for her awakening. And during a divorce and a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, she realized she had two choices: to heal or die. She chose to heal and become her own healer, allowing her to learn from some of the best. As an intuitive, holistic lifestyle coach specializing in inner child integration and quantum healing hypnosis, she's been able to support clients heal the root cause of their stories. Whether this is going to be from another lifetime or in this lifetime. So she heals across the board. So that's part of what's so interesting about Rosanne. I mean, I've learned so much about the world that we can't see from Rosanne, and she comes with a very unique perspective, but she's a very grounded person at the same time. So that's what I like about you, Rosanne, is that you're very balanced in that way. So today I'm really excited to talk to you about all these subjects that I feel like are really getting popular in the spiritual world, and spirituality in general is becoming really trendy. And so with that, you're getting a lot of stuff come up that people are using. I don't know how to explain it, more from an ego, not that ego is bad, but it's more from, I guess maybe a lack of understanding about actually how really it all works. And so we're going to talk a bit about that today. So welcome to the show, Rosanne. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for such a beautiful introduction. It's an honor to be here, and always a pleasure to connect with you, Allison, and in all the ways that our paths have crossed and reunited our soul groups again. So thank you for having me again.
Thank you. Yeah, same here.
I love it. Yes, we've definitely both evolved. So your show has evolved, you've evolved, our work has evolved. So it's perfect timing to share this knowledge and information with others.
Absolutely. We've both come a long way and evolved in a way together. I see you from time to time, either at a Journeys of Wisdom, intensive, or like just recently you invited me to your retreat, and that was wonderful. So it's always such a pleasure to see you. And I was like, miss me some Rosanne. I need to see you. So
it was perfect. It was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a couple of subjects that you and I played around with and wanted to talk about today. And so I would start by just, asking you if we want to maybe just go down the list, or do you want to kind of skip around? What would you like to start with?
No, what I'm hearing is you ask your questions first, because that's part of what's in the list is also what's on your mind. And so I think that's a beautiful organic segue into that. And yes, I feel like we will cover all of that, but they're like, answer her questions first.
Okay, cool. So, actually my first question would be, or maybe not question, but just statement is, would you mind sharing with everybody what you're talking about right there? Because everybody in my audience might not know that you channel. So, and what that
Okay, yes.
means and what, you know what I mean?
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
actually, you know what? Actually, I wanted to do a video on this because I had a client yesterday ask me what my definition of intuition was. And so, yes, thank you for that clarification because I do check in. I'm muscle testing where you can't see my hands, and so I check in with your higher self, my higher self, what I like to call source consciousness. If I'm doing deeper inner child work, obviously I'm talking to your inner child, and they are, like I say, our direct link to the divine. So they are pure consciousness and they know the way. So when you ask where should we go, I have trained my conscious mind to work in accordance with source consciousness, and that's my version of channeling. So I don't go into trance. I'm aware of what I'm saying. And yet, all the while, I know it's not necessarily Rosanne saying these words out of her ego's agenda. It really is calling in the divine. And I live my life like that from that place. And it really makes it so much easier versus Roseanne thinking, oh, I have to do this. And, what's the least amount of pain that I can, create for myself in these decisions versus, what's the most amount of joy or pleasure. And that's usually how the ego operates. When I gave all that up a couple years ago, it was pure surrender to the divine. So everything I ask, is it in the highest and greatest good? Is it the highest and greatest good to, have a salad for lunch? I mean, you can ask literally everything. Is it the highest and greatest good to take the main road to work or take the back roads to work? That way it takes the pressure off of the ego as well, and the ego becomes more of a bystander versus a director, and
I
it
like that.
makes it so much easier. and
Yeah.
and your higher self is not going to take you into, you know some terrible situation. Your higher self and your inner child want exactly what you want, which is to be loved and to be respected, honored, and I call in ease and grace all the time. And it really started, that relationship with my divine self or my higher self started after my awakening, and it was a steady process building that relationship. So I tell my clients, first and foremost, you have to be consistent. This isn't drive through spirituality. Like this is a lifetime, many lifetimes.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue into what we talked a lot about at the retreat, which was super interesting to me, which was the false spirituality that we're seeing some of,
Yeah.
and kind of differentiating that because I'd shared with you that I had an experience with someone that I really was resonating with, I thought, and I really was resonating with their teachings, and I went to see them in person at one of their talks, and I got the worst feeling when I was right up talking to them. And I was like, oh my God, what does this mean? Like
Hmm.
it was just a weird out of the blue, just big intuitive hit that like, this
Yeah.
is not for me. And I was really actually pretty confused about that because what that person was saying was, I felt like this is like in line with everything. There were a few things here and there that I was like, I'm not sure if I agree with that, or at the same time I was like, oh, okay, I'm a little bit beyond where he's at right now, not in
Mhm.
like a like I'm better than you thing, but I just
Yeah.
have been there.
Yeah.
And
What you're sharing.
so yeah, and so I thought those were interesting, but at the same time I was like, I feel like this is a person that's big in the spiritual realm,
Hmm.
and I'm like, a lot of people follow this person. And then, but when I got there, what I noticed was a lot of the people were not very healthy. And it seemed like they really wanted to, it's like they were
Yeah.
depending on this person for their happiness in some way. So I
You
was
na-
like,
you
oh,
nailed it. You nailed it right there in a nutshell. And that's kind of what Alice and I were speaking of before we started this interview was the light knows how to use the shadow, and the shadow knows how to use the light. And so there is, and it's not so black and white. It's not like, oh, you're only the light or you're only the shadow. There's actually another compartment which was revealed to me, is they're just um, information representatives. So
mm,
they're not light or dark. But in the instance that Allison was referring to, yes, there is that false idol or that spiritual inauthenticity. So they'll give you enough information that it's like, oh yeah, that resonates, or that feels right, or that feels true to me. And yet they're not really giving you the actual tools or the root cause of how to unstick yourself, or um, how to really be your own master and your own guru. And that's the distinction that I have discovered between um, true spirituality and inauthentic spirituality or pseudo spirituality. So these, and especially like you said earlier, it's spirituality has become very trendy. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people capitalizing on it. I mean, even makeup brands are using crystals to,
Right.
yeah, and it's like there's going to be the shadow taking advantage um, of for their own personal gains. And so you nailed it when you said my intuitive hit. So that's what I teach my clients is you are your own master, you are your own teacher, and to really cultivate that inner knowing and that inner dialogue. So when you are in those situations, you have that discernment and you're like, yeah, that doesn't resonate. I mean, Alice and I share a lot of the same teachers, and there's certain things where we're like, yep, that's coming out of the ego. And then there's times that we're like, I'll take that. I like that piece of information. I will utilize that or keep that in my toolbox. And that's where that self-mastery and that empowerment really comes from. So I I pick and choose with a discerning ear and a discerning heart what really resonates. But it was fascinating to me how many especially big name spiritualists are actually not of the light. And in fact, some
Yeah.
are dark or hiding behind the mask of the light to be those false idols, to gain finances personally for their own ego's agenda. And it's unfortunate because I've heard this from a lot of clients that have come to me, not just about who you're referring to, but other teachings and other uh, spiritual speakers or online, you know, wannabe celebrities. And it's all going to be disclosed, which is something else that has been shown to me. Like
Huh. Yeah.
when we got back from, I'm like, so I'm going to ask, can I share this? Yes. Okay. So sometimes it could be a bit much, as you know,
Yeah,
like,
this show is gonna be a bit much for some people,
I
I'm
love
sure,
it.
but that's okay. I'm ready
And
to hear,
I beautiful.
Yeah.
And we talked about this too at the retreat. Allison is also at the forefront of sharing information um, that is going to make people a little uncomfortable. And I know for both of us and a lot of other light workers, sharing knowledge and wisdom, it's been comfortable to hide because of
Mhm.
those repercussions, or what is my family going to say, or whatever. And we came here to shine the light, and so we won't be as persecuted this time, I heard, as other lifetimes that I've
That's good.
seen for
That's good.
sharing this knowledge and wisdom. So
Mm.
to share what I received after our retreat, after our trip
Mhm.
to Mount Shasta together, I came home and had a dream, very lucid dream and vision of. I'm like, all of it? Okay, yeah, just checking. I can edit, and they're like, nope, you could tell. Okay, so it was in the desert driving, and I had also done a road trip after uh, the Mount Shasta retreat, and I was called to clear a lot of stuck energy across California, Nevada, Arizona, and Utah, and then I returned back home. And I hesitated, and this is what it means to give yourself over to the divine, because that's a week off of work and our third dimensional responsibilities. And I heard, oh no, it's necessary. So I was like, okay. So I went, and so there's a lot of driving in the desert, a lot of clearing, a lot of Native American sacred grounds, burial sites, underground installations, things that were either blocking the light from coming in, trauma to certain groups, injustices to the lands, sacred spots, things like that. So I come back from that trip, and in my own integration, returning home, I had a vision my first night back, and I'm driving through the desert, and I see a spaceship to the right. And I was like, it's about time. Like, where have you been? I've been waiting for you. And then they showed me a purple screen with a hand hold like this, a hand holding a match. And I was like, oh, violet flame. So Saint Germain's violet flame. And I do use Saint Germain's violet flame for clearing, and you can also look that up online for more about that. And then two scrolls were dropped into my hand, and not ancient text scrolls. These were like photograph paper, like a professional photographer would use. And in the dark room, the images would start to appear. And I'm holding them, and in one of them, um, some of the images weren't fully developed yet. And the other one, the very top picture was a picture of Mount Rushmore, and all the presidents' faces were um, erased
Mm.
or chipped off. And on top of that picture, it said voided out. And the next picture underneath that was a lot of the false idols, celebrities, yes.
Oh,
And
wow.
they were
Huh.
shells. They just looked like shells of themselves. Their life force energy was drained out of them, and they looked sullen. And one of them was Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, wow.
And trust me, I have loved myself some Leo
Oh, yeah.
for many years. And when I heard he was not of the light, I was bummed, but that is
Yeah.
also a lot of what's been coming out in actual mainstream media. If you've I'm sure you've noticed with the stuff that's been going on in Hollywood and the movie industry and the religious sects and stuff like that, that more and more is being disclosed. And I've seen that as well. How one of the images I had, this was probably last fall, was rapid fire imagery of everything from the high end up all the way down to the low end, and how much has been corrupted from, I would see crests of monarchies, then family crests, and political figures, down to corporate names,
Wow.
even like the gas company logo, all the way down to laundry detergent, and showing me this overweight woman, and she's oblivious, and she's basically pouring toxins onto herself. And it came so fast, Allison, that it was like, oh my, what am I supposed to do with this information? And so I haven't actually shared that with anybody. And they're telling me today this is part of the reason why you've been guided and I've been guided to have this today, because
Mm.
it's time for more people to be aware of um, the manipulation and the control and the abuse that has been perpetrated throughout, not just this lifetime, but throughout our history here. And things that have, I
Yeah.
mean, obviously things that have been done to the earth and rainforests and our water and pollution. And I have friends on the Big Island right now and trying to stop a big drilling on Mauna Kea because they want to put another observatory there. And they've already desecrated sacred lands that the
Oh,
natives
wow.
have been there. So it's yeah, it's big. And so we're doing a lot of clearing right now, as you know, because
Yeah.
you experienced that firsthand in the retreat in Mount Shasta. And Allison is she's a warrior. She's willing to go there, and she does it on behalf of all of us, not just for her family, but all families and all of our um, all of our collective consciousness. Because as we heal and clear through and transmute through the physical, which is why we came in with the physical for these experiences, because we couldn't do it outside. That's why we chose these light workers, chose these souls chose, excuse me, chose these bodies to come in to do this work from the inside out. Because of the free will of this planet, we couldn't just um, change things from the outside. So that's why we came in, and we're kind of like, our generation, I say, is like the wrecking crew. We'll clear the road. So like Allison has beautiful children, so they don't have to clean up that mess. Like
Yeah.
they're still going to experience some of that fallout, but they're also going to get to experience more of the healing. And we had to do more of the heavy lifting, we'll say. So.
Yeah, and what you've shared, thank you for sharing that, by the way, Roseanne. And I know I could tell that wasn't easy. And the other thing I would say, will say is, I just a few questions came up just for my information, but for also really the audience is, and when you say a couple things here, when you say light, someone's not of the light, is that, does that mean corruption? They've been kind of corrupted by kind of the things that you're
Yes.
mentioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a lot of celebrities to gain that. And so there's also souls that specifically came in dark. Some
You went out for
chose.
a
Oh
second
yeah.
there. The
Okay.
technology
I
was
saw that.
failed you.
No worries.
You just, I
I'll
think
repeat
you
that.
were saying, some celebrities, I think, are pulled into that because
Yeah,
they want to
some
be
are
famous. Yeah.
groomed to make those deals with the dark. Some souls came in already dark, and
And
so it's
can you explain that a little bit more? I'm
sure.
sorry, because I know that I think that people might be like, okay, what does that mean? Like
Hmm.
you've heard that before. But I just want to get a little bit more to the bottom of like what that means, because I mean, I've heard that, you can go down a YouTube rabbit hole and hear
Oh
many
my gosh,
about that.
yes,
But
that's.
and it's fascinating. But at the same time, you're like, what does this all mean? So when you
Hmm.
say that, you mean like they're actually, to me, I guess that would mean that they are, giving up parts of themselves to
Hmm.
for fame, or maybe their values, or what they, or
Yeah,
maybe self-love, and those kinds of things. Is that what you're saying? In a way,
it's kind
compromising
of
that.
like making a deal with your using your soul as collateral. I
Mm,
want this, and I don't have anything. Oh well, you can have this, but it's going to cost you. And but I say in the big picture, from a multidimensional standpoint, it's all the light. I mean, it all
yeah,
comes from source originally, and yet we agree to play these roles. And so we've all been dark, we've all been light, we've all been the perpetrator, we've all been the victim, and
right,
we had to know all of those facets as pure consciousness, because how would consciousness know itself as consciousness if it was only one-sided? And so,
right.
one of our other fellow practitioners messaged me the other day. She's like, it would be pretty boring if it was if everybody agreed
Yeah,
with us or everybody
totally.
liked us.
Gosh,
And I was like,
yeah.
it's true.
Got to have the polarity.
And that's specifically what this dimension with this particular planet school is known for, is its duality and its
Mm,
polarity, whereas other dimensions or other planes of existence, I've had clients in hypnosis go to other planets and other timelines, plenty, and they don't have that. They don't know what war is. They don't know what grief is. They don't know what famine is. They don't know what hurt or pain is. And so they are, like I said, this is like the graduating class. Like, if it wasn't,
yeah,
they said if it wasn't hard, it would take you 10,000 more lifetimes to wake up. So there is that metaphor of the diamond. Like the
yeah.
diamond is the diamond once all that pressure and that heat and that force reveals itself. And
Mhm.
we are very much like that diamond.
I like that analogy, and I also like the analogy of putting your hand on a hot stove. You're going to take it off right away. It's going to create an action right
Hmm.
away, rather than just being like, "Oh, I think that's hot. I'm not sure, but like
Yeah,
it's
exactly. And
around."
that's where the ego comes in. So I say the ego gets a bad rap. The ego's not going to let you stick your hand on a stove or
Hmm.
wander into traffic.
Right.
It was specifically designed as a part of us, not as us. And uh, for many years of my life, I literally thought there was no separation. I thought my ego was my higher self, my personality, all of it. And it wasn't until my 30s that I realized it's not the case. The ego serves a very basic function: keep you alive in your body. But
Yeah.
because it's run amok, and going back to like our primal days when we had to, fight or flight, we had to hunt. And when you're not doing that, especially in modern times, the ego will create those responses out of um, almost out of habit, just from
Right.
cellular memory from years and lifetimes ago.
Yeah, that and that is actually that goes into what I was going to mention also is that when you mentioned my children, they, I feel like, are going to benefit from us doing a lot of clearing for ourselves. You know what I mean? So like when we're clearing our ancestors' pains and kind of stopping the patterns in this lifetime of things that have happened in the past or things that you inherited, um, then then our kids won't have to endure that, and they'll have a lot more energy
Absolutely.
for doing much more good in the world and creating a better earth.
Absolutely. And you've been doing this long enough, and so you know the ripple effect that it has in your
Yeah,
family,
absolutely.
in the people around you, whether they're blood relatives or not. And so physical DNA is obviously, your children look like you, but they also carry your energetic DNA, just like you carried mom and dads and grandma and grandpas, as we know. And what I love is there's a lot more studies now of proving scientific proof about the energetic DNA that comes in, um, like stress disorders in children that their grandparents were in, refugee camps or
Mhm.
experienced war, and they didn't
Epigenetics is what you're talking
yes,
about? Yeah.
exactly, like they didn't experience that, and yet they're still carrying that trauma. And
Mhm.
I've seen that with addictions, I've seen that with just nervous habits, and also things that we gravitate to, like, why do I even like this?
Yeah,
Where did that come from?
right.
Or why am I afraid of that? Where did that come from? And so absolutely 100% the work that we do and the healing that we take on at an individual level energetically shifts those miasms or those patterns or those habits or those addictive programs from carrying forward into that live stream of your children, or like I said, I'll take it further into the collective. So it goes both ways.
Absolutely.
If you're going to create, negative energy, you're going to trigger more negative energy. You're creating positive energy, that's going to trigger more positive energy,
Yeah. Yeah,
because there's nothing
absolutely.
separate. People think, oh, well, that's Allison and that's her family. Not, no, it goes
No.
across the board. I've
Mhm.
literally
That
worked with clients that have healed something in this lifetime, and it healed multiple timelines.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I had a similar discussion with one of my coaches. Her name's Hannah Beer, and she does the family constellation
Mhm.
therapy, and it works that way, right? And so
Totally.
it's incredible. And and that reminds me of the retreat that we went on when we were around the most beautiful water I've ever
Hmm.
seen in the Mount Shasta area. Had the most beautiful experience, and then we were one of the days we were at this place called Stewart Mineral Springs, and in the Mount Shasta area. And there was the water had was coming from Mount Shasta into this creek that you could do a cold plunge into. And you had mentioned that Dr. Emoto had blessed the water, who the author of Hidden Messages in Water, among other books. That's just one of his books, one of the
Hmm.
many. And it reminded me of that because I remember hearing about his book when and and Paul talking about it constantly, and looking at the book and everything when I was going through the Czech Institute classes. And I hadn't even thought about it since then. And you had reminded me. I was like, I need to check this book out again. And then I'm listening to it recently, and I'm like, wow, this is incredible, because like you're talking about the ripple effect. He talks about that very thing. And then many
Ah,
of the things he talks about are um because of our body is, what is it, what, 70% water.
yeah,
So and it takes on, water takes on energy,
absolutely.
right? It's like
Absolutely.
so if you guys haven't read that book, he talks about how water crystallizes differently depending on the intent that goes to it, or the words that you actually say around water, the feelings that you have depending on pain, happiness, gratitude, love, or really big ones. And it's a really interesting book. It's a little bit dated because I think he wrote it in the 90s or something,
Oh, yeah.
but definitely there's some things that now I look at and I say, oh, okay, this is, because you can look back on a lot of a lot of books, and not that it's a spiritual book, it actually has some science
Yeah, he was a
that
scientist for
he was a
sure.
scientist. Yeah, he was
Hmm.
a serious scientist. But and he discovered some amazing things, but now you can look back at it and we can kind of start understanding why that happened, and it's kind of fascinating. Um but my point is that I think a lot of also the spirituality now, the trendy stuff, and a lot of the things that kind of circling back to what we were talking about earlier with some of the some of the beliefs around spirituality really sprouted from that book, which are all really beautiful things. But again, then sometimes the information is taken wrong, or people are using it maybe in a different way than it was intended, right? Or
Hmm.
just saying, I'm just going to put this word on my bottle, the word love and gratitude,
Yeah,
that'll make everything better, like
yeah,
instead of
right.
really
No,
owning the
you're
rest
right.
of it.
And
And
it is truly the intent, like you said,
yeah,
behind it. And what I share with my clients, and you're right, before we go into sessions, Dolores Cannon, who was the one that developed the quantum healing hypnosis, who was um, how I became a practitioner, she actually started working with Dr. Emoto more in the etheric field. They've both transitioned, and um, and Allison, I know because I've had meals with her. We bless our food, so you bless that
yeah.
because it's all energy. And so I
Mhm.
teach my clients, glass of water, because you are mostly water. It's clearing the cellular memory and the membrane. So if you're putting, just like Dr. Emoto taught, and you can watch videos online, they're still out there. And like Allison mentioned, the books, that intention of what you put in there. And so on a regular basis, even before our interview today, I said, I am love, I am light, I am divine, I am healed, I am perfected, I am protected. And then you drink your water, you're putting that intention into it. And so I do that with everything. I do that with my food. I do that with my house. You could do it
Yeah.
with your car. I mean, you're blessing everything and raising that vibration, because everything has consciousness. People think, oh, well, that's a
All
glass. That
right.
is no,
Yeah.
everything. There's no
That's what
like,
he talks about too. It's interesting too, and I teach people how to do that with their bodies because, again, you're living in this, and it's like if you're not paying attention to it, or if you're criticizing it, or if
oh,
if
for
you're not
sure.
loving your body, no matter where you are in the process, it's going to reflect that, just like anything
Absolutely.
else. Everything has some kind of a
Yes.
level of consciousness. The same way with your kids, like ignoring your kids, like, or your
Totally.
plants or your animals, you have
Yes.
to show interest. I think the most love you can give somebody or something is to show interest, and
Mhm.
give your
Your
present that
attention.
person.
Yeah, attention.
Yeah.
Like we talk about with the inner child, what do all children want?
Yeah.
Your love and attention. So if
Exactly.
you just use that across the board with everything, I talk to my plants. I say thank you to my bed. I obviously I'm the extreme. Most people don't do those things, but but it is a daily practice for me, and it works. It keeps my space clean. It keeps me clean. Um, it keeps me healthy. I talk to the consciousness of my cells, just like I talk to my inner child, and I say thank you for being so young and healthy, and
Right.
so so youthful, and so balanced and integrated and harmonized. Like I thank it, because I mean, I tell my clients, I said, when was the last time you acknowledged your feet? They take you
Right.
everywhere.
Oh my
It's like,
God, they're so
yeah,
important.
unless they hurt, you stubbed a
Mhm.
toe,
Yeah.
you got a blister, something. We don't.
No.
We don't. And so just taking that time, like you said, when you're working out, um, my partner's also a Czech practitioner, and I remember when I met him years ago, he's like, oh, I didn't, you know, bench enough, or whatever, some statement. And I said, don't, what did you just say? I said, how dare you? Don't put your body down, and your inner children are listening to this as well. And because he grew up in a very athletic home, so and as we all do,
Mhm.
most of the before we're aware of it, is that unconscious behavior of shaming ourselves in some way. And and I brought it to his attention. He said, wow, thank you. I said, instead of going in and bowing to yourself in the mirror and saying thank you, body, for whatever you're willing to do today, let's play. Like, that's a whole different experience in
Yes.
the gym versus I'm gonna Like
Absolutely.
Allison's great. She knows how to play in the gym. I love watching her. I'm like, I want to do handstands again. Like that's
It did.
super motivating.
It does make it a whole different experience when you're having fun as opposed to
Absolutely.
feeling like you have to do it and it's
Yeah.
drudgery, you know?
And that is the inner child versus the conditioned self, the
Mhm.
conditioned the conditioned parental voice that comes through, oh, well, you need to do this, so you need to do that. I have a client that was going into surgery today and was already texting me how she needs to get back to work by Monday. I said, "You're having surgery.
Mm.
Why I need to work?" And I said, "Could it be possible this is why you created the interruption called surgery in the first place? Because
Right.
we make money our God, we make work our identity, and none of it's true. None of that's real."
Right.
And so a lot of this work that we do is really breaking down the illusions. And when you can listen, and so I introduced her to her inner child, and when we listen to them, like I said, they're never wrong. They have no reason to lie to us. They want exactly what we want, to be, again, to be loved, that freedom, more play.
Mhm.
And when we don't meet their needs, you and I both know they will kick our ass, or they'll
Yeah, like,
enroll other
let's
people to
talk
kick
a
our ass.
little bit more about that because I know it is powerful work, and I continue to use that the inner child work also, just to learn more about myself. And kind of it's interesting because like there are times, and I know everybody can probably relate to this, is that you feel like, wait a minute, I don't feel like myself, I'm being really childish, so to say, or and it's like it doesn't make sense why I have this
Yeah,
response or this trigger, and
absolutely.
and then you're like, "Oh, okay, what?" Not what I asked myself is, which kid is coming up today? Like,
Yeah.
which Allison is this? Like, is this the
Yes.
8-year-old Allison? Is this the 2-year-old Allison? You
Yeah.
know,
So you
and
can get to the root of it.
yeah,
Absolutely. Because where did this begin? So that's, you know, again, you've been doing this work, so you have that beautiful awareness. And that's another reason why we're sharing this, because this isn't mysterious. It's actually quite
mm-mm,
simple. We make it way harder than it needs to be. Children are very simple. You've seen them. They'll cry, then they'll poop, then they're eating, and then they're sleeping, and they are very experiential, present beings. And then we get into our little egos, and then we conform, and I've got to do this in order to matter. I've got to do this to get my needs met.
right,
And that's really who's running the show most of the time. So going back to what you said, where's this really coming from? I bring to my clients' attention, anytime you feel bitchy, moody, scared, anxious, nervous, depressed, angry, whatever does not feel harmonious, that's little you trying desperately to get your attention. Look at me, pay attention to me, love me. And most of us ignore that voice. I know I did for many years, and keep on trucking. And then boom, there's the ticket, there's the accident, there's the
right,
disease, there's the divorce, there's the lawsuit, there's the breakup, there's the firing. It's all
yeah,
feedback. I say everything is feedback. I get perfect parking all the time. Why? Because I'm vibrating at that level that of course that's there for me. There, I know
yeah,
I talk to the parking spot before I even get around the corner. I know you have the perfect space waiting for me. Thank you. So that becomes my reality. Just like the perfect people find me. I don't
yeah.
choose. Not everybody can hear us, Allison, and that's fine. Not everybody is ready, and we aren't here to work with everybody. We're here to work with those that can hear us or can see us.
Yeah, and I just want to make this statement too. I just want to make it apparent that this is not a privileged thing. This is
No,
absolutely 100% taking responsibility for yourself,
100%.
taking and becoming aware. Like I mentioned with the inner child, and I know you work with a lot of, like, you worked with me and some of my inner children during the retreat. And I think for me, it's like it's very simple, like you say. It's just that these parts of yourself want to be heard. They want to be acknowledged because they weren't maybe at that time, and those are just parts of you that want to be healed and brought back into the
Yeah,
whole.
absolutely. And
And
they're carrying a lot of false beliefs too.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely,
I mean, the main themes with pretty much all humans is I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, it's my fault, I'm not lovable, I'm not deserving, I'm not wanted. I mean, at some level, we all have that hiding in our root chakra.
Oh, that's a big one. Yeah. Belonging, being loved, like, oh my gosh.
Separation, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
the separation anxiety that we all carry, and I noticed that, when I work with my clients, when they've healed those stories about what they've made mom and dad, bringing in the aspect of the divine,
Mm,
feeling that separation from source when we can never be separate from source. We are source. Source is everything, everywhere, in consciousness and everything. We chose to experience the illusion of separation so we could have that remembrance of returning back to self. And
mm-hmm.
so we left our inner children long ago in order to survive, and returning those children back to us is like returning to source. We are source to our
Yeah.
inner children.
Yeah. And
It's a
they know
big
how to
one.
play.
Yeah, they know the way. I was used to
Yeah.
getting my ass kicked for so long and just like damage control and apologizing and renegotiating with them until I realized, oh, wait a minute. One day I was like, they have the key. They know the way. So I
Mhm.
just defer to them. If she doesn't want to do something, I'm like, okay. I don't have any
Yeah.
question about it anymore. I don't doubt it. I don't force her. Do not obligate your inner child by any means to do anything.
Yeah.
They
Don't
will,
negotiate. Just listen.
no, just listen. Totally. 100%.
Hmm. So
Absolutely.
that's great. I love that, and I love that way of seeing it, and experiencing it, because it just makes it more fun. Like, and what else are we here to do? But just experience life and have fun and enjoy. Kind of what we're creating. And again, it's taking responsibility for what you're creating, and really, and I think at this point in history, it's really about what you want to focus on, because there's so many choices and you can get distracted and pulled into other areas of focus. But I think the hard work is staying focused on really what you want to create. I think it
Absolutely.
really just comes down to that.
Yeah. And
um,
what are you serving in that creation?
yeah,
Are you
totally.
serving self? Are you listening to ego, which is usually going to operate out of fear? Are you listening to your higher self, inner child? And I also teach my clients, notice where you're listening from. Right brain is your creative side. It's your creator side.
Right.
That's where you work specifically. That's where I get my information. This doesn't chime up anymore, but it used to be very loud and be actually the most dominant voice that I heard in my decision making and in my experience of life. And so when, like I said, what are you serving? Are you serving the fear? Are you serving the love?
Mm,
It's actually
yeah.
really simple, and trust me, this part will resist. the,
And
the
like,
ego will be like, you
yeah,
got to
like,
pay that bill, Allison. No, you got to, no, you can't be
gotta be
playing in the, yeah,
responsible. Yeah,
yes.
right. Well, in that way, right? We gotta still do our duties, and
Hmm.
that is the heart. That is also part of it too. As the challenges, like being grounded and being able to see the magic in life and
Yeah,
really experience those things, and be able to have time to breathe and pay
yeah,
attention and be present for people you want to be present with, and love and be interested in.
absolutely. And that
You know,
brings it, and
yeah,
that brings it to another level of trust.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, like I
Yeah.
just shared the other day, like trust is true faith is trusting without proof and evidence. Now, the ego loves proof and evidence. Like, well,
Mhm.
if you marry this person, they'll never leave you, right? They're going to love you forever. They're not going to change, right? Well, we all know that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And California has like the
Mm.
highest divorce rate, I think. And
Oh
so,
my goodness.
and I was part of that group, so I needed all those distinctions. And so, trusting at that level that, and I just experienced this, like I said, being gone for a week after the retreat, and not seeing clients, and literally just listening to the divine guide me where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do at that moment. There's still that part of my human self that came in and said, well, I'm not getting paid for this. Like, I still have my third dimensional world, and bills and and rent and stuff like that. So my my trust, that's when I posted that. It's like, I'm still my number one coach for me. I still coach
Mm.
all parts of me. And I was like, oh, this is having faith and trusting without proof and evidence. And then a new client came in and another referral came in and another referral came in.
That's
And it's like
great. Yeah.
this all happened in a matter of a couple days, like 48 hours. And it's
Yeah.
like that was more than you would have made if you had stayed here and worked
Isn't that
all week.
amazing when that happens? It's so incredible when you're just going by, and I'm just now, I feel like this year learning really how to do this, but just following what lights you up and not being scared, like you said, like having that voice saying, well, I got to stay, I got responsibilities, I got to, not that,
Yeah.
not to say we don't want to take care of, like if we have kids, you need to stay and take care of your
Yeah,
kids.
sure.
But
Exactly.
but there's like sometimes, like you said, you want to
There's a
have a longer
balance.
vacation because when you have your own business, you feel
Yes.
the need to be there all the time. But
Yes.
to allow yourself to do that, that's huge, and to just trust that everything will be fine, and then to come back to even more clients, that's even more
Yes.
incredible. So
Because you're
yeah,
recharged too. And I noticed that as well. My
yeah,
inner child was like, yes, I get to be in nature. And even though I was working, um, I still had those little pockets of moments where I could be with her and play in the water or go on a hike. And she needed that alone time with you. Don't be afraid to spend that time with yourself, whether it's in meditation or just taking your inner child out to lunch with yourself.
yeah,
They love that. Like you said, what do children want the most? Your love and attention. And so
absolutely.
it is a balance, but it really presents itself the more I have allowed myself to trust in the divine. And I remember saying, divine will, not my will. And I heard my higher self say, oh, if only all your ego parts believed that. I was like, what do you mean? Like, and so I muscle tested for myself. And this was, I know, about like a year and a half ago, uh, last January. And when I heard this, and so I came up with the mantra, divine will, please replace my will. And I went on a 2-hour hike and I repeated it for 2 hours. And the very next day, I was back home and I was driving on the street and this minivan got too close to me and I was like, ugh, and I jerked the car and I was like, dang it, that is the minivan's not real. That was part of my simulation to show other parts of me how I still don't trust, or at least
Mm.
my ego wanted, and my ego fought back immediately. No, you're trying to protect the car. You don't need an accident. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Literally, these are the kinds of conversations I have. And so 2 weeks straight, I repeated the mantra in my head at work, driving, at home, whatever. Divine will, please replace my will. Divine will, please replace my will. And one morning, I'm sure I'm not the only one who gets a lot of downloads in the bathroom, but I was in the, in the bathroom, I heard divine will is my will. And I was like, ah, and it came out of me just automatic. I
Huh.
wasn't thinking, I was just in that meditative
Wow.
state.
Yeah.
And my whole body just felt this release and I just felt bliss and giddy for like a week. And so I
Hmm.
really truly operate at that level. And I can muscle test for you if you want to know how often your ego tries to exert its will over the divine will.
Sure. Why not?
I'm like,
I'll
they're
take.
like, she's open to it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm asking, may I have permission to ask this question? Can I? May I? Thank you. So how often does Allison's ego parts, because it's not Allison, as you know, just that part, it tries to exert its will over divine will? More than 10, more than 20. Good job. 10, 11, only 13%.
Do I get an A plus?
That is the A plus level right there. On average, most people, their
Ah,
egos are resisting about 70 to 75% of the time.
wow, that's
So they're
incredible.
only trusting
Huh.
in the divine 20-ish percent. And so the clients that
Huh.
work with me reverse that and they get down to, I'm trusting 75% of the time and my ego will chirp in 25%. So
Yeah.
you're way below that at 13. So
Wow. Well, I have done a lot of work around that, so
yes, you
maybe it's working.
definitely. It's
Well,
beautiful.
I would. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
I wanted to talk about you had one thing. I think we have kind of skated around this a little bit, but just before we close up, I just wanted to leave everybody with something around awakening consciousness, and you had put that on as one of your talking points, but I wasn't
Mhm.
really sure direction you wanted to go in with
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
And I guess briefly, I'm going to say that your audience most likely, I'm like, is that true? Yes. So I just check. That way it's not my ego like, I'm going to
Right.
say this. No. Yes. So you have an awakened audience. So
Oh, that's good to
that's how
know.
they
Thank
found you,
you.
and they're ready.
Yeah.
And so, yes, are there different, um, I don't use the word level, different stages of awareness in the awakening of consciousness? Absolutely. I tell my partner some things and his eyes roll back like, that's too much for me. So, not everybody is at that state of awareness, and yet we all are ultimately pure consciousness. So, it's whatever level of integration. And I love that word. That we are comfortable with. Because as you know, you can never go, what does John say? You can never go too deep. You can go too fast, though.
Yes, that's
And
so
so,
true. Yeah.
some people are not ready for the whole, let's look behind the
It's like the
veil. It's
ayahuasca
like,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, "Whoa."
Yeah, that's a
It's not
lot.
a good
That's a
experience for
deep
some
end.
people. Yeah.
Correct. And so that's why I say doing this work in a more graceful way. And so I call my work Ascension with Grace, because I took the hard route and I needed to know what the hard and brutal route was, because A, that's how I learned, and B, I needed to know the distinction. So when I became a teacher and a facilitator, I could have that compassion, empathy, and experience of guiding in a much more graceful way. And literally, Source said, "You came here to be grace, but first you needed to know what disgrace was." And I was born.
Ah,
My middle name really is Grace, so I was born with that name. So I
that's
was like,
amazing. Yeah.
"Great, thanks for that." So,
You've
awakening
lived up to
consciousness,
it.
yeah, really, full embodiment.
That's right.
So you have to. How else do we know? We need those distinctions. So the awakening of consciousness is planetary. It is global. It is, again, part of why our souls came here. Not all souls came here to have an awakening experience. Some souls came to the earth plane specifically to have an earth experience,
Mm.
or to experience what it was like to be born into a body. There's It's not just one facet or one faction of souls. We have many different beings here in these bodies, and I call it the light worker, or the light worker soul group that that came here to awaken individual consciousness and collective consciousness. So
Mhm.
we both had to experience our own individual awakening, Allison's version, Rosanne's version, so we could have this conversation where consciousness could connect and share with other consciousness. So it also makes it easier, because I went through a lot of this alone when I first went through my awakening in 2000, and um, there wasn't as many people talking
Yeah.
so openly and publicly,
Right.
and I questioned my sanity. I was scared and confused and looking for other spiritual guides or teachers. And I remember contacting this author, this well-known author, and he had wrote this book about his awakening. I was like, oh, someone's going to have some answers. No, I had a I paid for a Skype session with this man, and I ended up coaching him. I'm like, dang it, he
Oh
doesn't know
my god.
anything, but he doesn't know anything more. Like, I already
Yeah.
know, they've already shown me all this. I already got this. And it's like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so I've had many years of integrating this knowledge, and like I said, I feel we're being all light workers are being called to share
Mhm.
more of this, so it becomes the norm. So it's not so woo woo or, oh, new agey. It's like, no, this is a way of life. This is more of a natural flow and rhythm, with because we forget we are nature.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we've
Yeah.
separated ourselves from so much that we don't even trust our own intuition. And it's like, could you imagine an animal in the woods not trusting its own intuition? Like, that
Mm.
seems absurd. They wouldn't
Yeah,
make it. And
that's
yet
true.
we are exactly that. So where does all the disease and dysfunction and confusion and um, neuroses and anxieties come from? Because we are not living in that integration of self.
Yeah.
We're not living in that divine alignment with all of our senses, not our just our human five senses. We are all intuitive. We are all divine. We're all connected. And so, what I'm seeing now is clients that, because the awakening has been going on for some years now, many years now, and again, it's not like, oh, I'm late to the party. No, it's all perfect when and how you showed up. Like, I have clients that are in their 20s and they're fully aware, amazing, expanded, beautiful beings. And I'm like, Source, why didn't I wake up in my 20s? They're like, you would have died. Like, there was nobody talking to you about this in your 20s.
Right.
They're like, you thought you were alone this time? You would have never made it. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's always perfect. We don't all see and know the big picture, the behind the scenes picture. And that's another reason why I like hypnosis, because I can ask more of those behind the scenes or those quantum questions. And so I am seeing some clients going through awakenings recently in very dramatic ways,
Mm-hmm.
massive health issues, near death experiences, um, you know, major surgeries,
Mm-hmm.
big life, big life upheavals, to basically pull that old rug out, that's like, this isn't who you are.
Right. It's a big wake up call. Like, we can't
Yes.
do this anymore, basically.
No.
Yeah.
And because and like we talked about, Allison, we're all programmed to just keep on going, keep on working, keep on,
Mm-hmm.
being loyal to these programs, whether they're family programs, society, school, religion, work, whatever it is, instead of truly tapping in and listening to that divine self. And number one way, meditation, quiet time, ask, 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 ask. If you
Yeah.
don't ask, you're not going to hear. So you have to ask and invite your inner child, your higher self. Bring them in as part of your mastermind group, because they will
Yeah.
guide you properly. And
Yeah.
so I've had clients walk into, I own the float lounge in Laguna Beach, and some clients find me there. And one of my clients last year, she said, I can't drink beer, I can't eat meat, I used to smoke cigarettes, all gone in a matter of like 2 weeks. What just happened to me? And I said, oh, you went through your awakening. And not saying you can't eat meat or drink beer or smoke or do whatever as an awakened being, but she hadn't been doing any work, and so she needed to have a big interruption to catch her
Oh,
up.
I see. Yeah.
And
Yeah. That makes
so just
sense.
like my
Yeah.
clients with um, massive surgeries or near death experiences or things like that, those are interruptions. And what I admire so much about their inner child is how bold they were. Like, they're not listening. Like, it
Mm.
is not a negative thing. I tell all my clients that is the best thing that could have happened to you. It's
Yeah.
getting you on the right path. And so also the next phase of that is, how do I find my footing now? And I know my ego went through that. Like, I just blew my shit up. Everything that I believed was me or
Right.
was safe or was my structure or my foundation is gone. So it is calling us to come from that pure place to reestablish what are my foundational principles? Where do I really want to be? And like you said, where do you see yourself? What am I going to serve now? Because serving, my ego out of this platform clearly didn't work, and everything's now dismantled. So let
Yeah.
me reassess this. And I even had one client, he's like, I was trying to put the pieces back together and I realized this wasn't going to work anymore. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah, it's
That's
interesting
beautiful.
too, because you can really feel it when it's just not going to work anymore, and there's
Oh
nothing
yeah.
that could make you do it again. Like, so there's
No.
something to that. There is an energy to life that we totally dismiss on a regular basis. We pretend like it's not there, but it is, and you can feel it. Like, with certain people that walk in the room, you can
Oh
feel,
yeah.
different energy,
Everything.
like it's there. Let's just acknowledge that it's there and all agree that, there's something to this, and that we need to address that within ourselves, so then it's
Yes.
not such a chaotic, shit show all the time, like,
Totally.
I
I
mean,
get it. I love
it's
that
way
you
more fun.
said radically responsible, and what you just described. I say energy doesn't lie. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
and the more you're perceptive to all of this feedback, the more your ego, because again, the ego loves proof and evidence, but it's usually operating out of proof and evidence of well, this isn't going to work, or I'm not good enough. And so it wants to collect more of that. But I say, if you start training the ego to collect proof and evidence how everything works in your favor,
Right.
how you are, connected, you are intuitive, you will definitely get more feedback in that department as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great point to be made because it can go either way. It's like,
Hmm.
which way do you want to do it? Do you want,
Yeah.
I definitely want to do
Yes.
you know,
I
the more
woke up one
positive
morning, I woke up one
route.
morning and I heard all beliefs are untrue. And I was like, hmm, hmm, Oh, okay. Yeah. It took me
Yeah,
three recitals in my head. And I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. And they're like, if everything's untrue, if all beliefs are untrue, then create beliefs that work for you, that support you.
exactly. Yes.
Like,
That's,
I have a healthy, powerful, young body. I see you doing
Mhm.
handstands.
I know, right?
Yeah, I
I
was
had no
like,
idea. Like of course, let me just say that I was a gymnast. I think people know that by now, but that was like 30 years ago that I did gymnastics. So,
yeah,
I never thought
same
I would be
here.
able to do a handstand, especially on parallettes, like after all the
Yeah, no,
back injuries. And I just had a show. I told you that I talked about all my injuries. So if you hear that show, you'll know that my body has been through a lot, and
yeah,
Rosanne knows that. And so it's kind of amazing, like anything really can happen if you really just want
yes,
it, if you focus on that. It's a little cliche, but I think in some respect, if you're focusing on the good in life and like receiving the good in life, I think that's what's going to come to you. And like you said,
yeah.
like the beliefs you choose are so important for creating your reality.
It's all basically it's all a game. So it's like, how do you want to play it? So,
Absolutely. That is exactly true. I love it. I love it. Well, before we go, Rosanne, I really want you to leave everybody with information about your retreats because they're amazing. And you do some
thank
retreats in
you.
Sedona. You just did your
Yes,
first in Mount Shasta. So,
yes.
you have any more coming up here?
Yes, so there's going to be an all women's retreat in Sedona and then a co ed retreat in Sedona. So I was guided, that is going to be in November. I have some other speaking engagements, uh, workshops, and um, smaller events peppered here and there. Again, as I receive them, they're like, and you're doing this. I'm like, oh, okay. So um, they don't let me plan out too far in advance, but those events will be posted on my website at rosannegrace.com.
Okay, great. And I would
Mm-hmm.
highly recommend everybody follow Rosanne on Instagram, and then you can definitely
Yes,
stay in the know as far as what she has coming up. And
thank you.
yeah, I would
Yeah, I
highly
definitely will
recommend
post them
go
on
to one of her
Instagram.
retreats. They're amazing. And as far as like, did you did say your website as far as how to, if people want to do coaching with
Oh,
you?
yes.
Um,
Yeah, that's also on there. They can book on the website at rosannegrace.com.
okay,
You can also message me, like Allison said, at rosanne.grace at Instagram, and on Facebook, it's rosanne.grace.home. So either
great,
way, you can get a hold of me. All my information's on there.
awesome. Thank you, Rosanne.
Wonderful. Thank you, Allison. It
Yeah,
was awesome. It's always beautiful connecting with you. And thank you
same
again for this
here.
platform and for doing what you do in
Oh,
every way.
yeah. Thank you. You're
Mm.
amazing. I was so happy to have
Thank
you
you.
on today. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad it worked out. No,
Me
again,
too.
literally,
Yeah.
Allison's like, could you schedule, And I was like, mm-hmm. Could you schedule? I'm like, mm-hmm. And then Source is like, now. I was like, okay. So literally
Oh,
that's
yeah.
how I work. So
Yeah, I
it's
figured I
always
was like,
like,
okay, we can do it tomorrow. That's fine. I have, luckily have the time available, so let's do it.
totally.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm
Thank
glad it
you.
worked out. Thank
Me
you, Annie.
too. And yeah, I'll let you know when the show comes out, and
Perfect.
let's definitely stay connected in the meantime.
Absolutely.
All right.
Beautiful. Yes, I know I'm going to be heading up in that direction.
Oh, great. Yeah,
So,
let me
yes.
know.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know it. Absolutely. I thought it was going to be earlier, and they're like, no, it's going to be late. Okay. So, again, I just say yes when they tell me to go.
Sounds good to me. I like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Again, I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. I
Yeah, you're
love
so
you.
welcome. I love you too. I'll see you soon, hopefully. Bye, Rosanne.
Yes. Bye, honey. Thank you.